Welcome to ShelfHelp. In this regular blog series at 4 Rooms Creative Self-Care, I use some of the principles of bibliotherapy to recommend a few books to read on a specific topic. ShelfHelp uses a general approach in which varied kinds of books are recommended in order that there is a wide range for listeners to choose from. For a more personalized list tailored to your specific reading preferences and issues, go to our website for more information. ShelfHelp appears about every 2 to 3 weeks. If you have a topic or an issue you might like to see addressed, you can email me at shelfhelp@4rooms.ca with your suggestion. Your idea might become the subject of a future episode. This week's topic is memory and forgetting. I've been talking about these things on my blog, and I realize there are many people who have been touched by diseases like Alzheimer's or dementia within their own families. This is a difficult situation for the patient and caregiver alike. This week I will talk about a few stories in which the characters are facing similar situations. The first book is Still Alice by Lisa Genova. In this novel, Alice is a 50-year-old college professor whose perfect life, successful job, loving husband, and 3 grown children, begins to unravel when she is diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. Her family struggles to cope with this shocking news. The story explores how such a diagnosis affects both the patient and the circle of family and friends who surround that individual. Alice sets up a memory checklist for herself with instructions to go to her computer and open a file called Butterfly and follow the instructions within, if she ever finds herself unable to meet her checklist requirements. It's a stunning book told from the perspective of an individual who is the sufferer and describes what it feels like to be the person losing your past. The author has a PhD in neuroscience and researched this book extensively, using her wide professional network. She also talked to people who were in the early diagnostic stages of early onset Alzheimer's and used them as her first readers to be sure she was getting things right. The result is a book with deep emotional impact. The next book, The Madonnas of Leningrad by Deborah Dean, is a short novel with great depth. The story goes back and forth between the present day and World War II Leningrad. Marina, the main character, has Alzheimer's. Her daughter is taking her to a family wedding, but Marina can't always recall just who is actually getting married. The story shows her daughter and her emotional reactions to the situation, but it also slips back into Marina's past, specifically to the siege of Leningrad, which Marina lived through. During the 900 days that Leningrad was surrounded by Germans during World War II, many of the citizens starved. Marina's family took shelter in the basement of the Hermitage Museum along with many others. All of the paintings were removed, ostensibly for safekeeping, although many ended up in party leaders' hands in the end. But Marina spends much of her time taking solo tours of the museum, where she had memorized each missing painting, and she describes each painting and its meaning. The redemptive power of great art is key to this book. Art, hope, and love of family all shine through and make this a very moving story. In the next book, The Last Days of Ptolemy Gray by Walter Mosley, we have an elderly man who is suffering from dementia. Ptolemy Gray is 91, and he lives in his past. He doesn't leave his house, and his existence is threatened when his nephew, who has been his link to the world, is killed in a drive-by shooting. A family connection, a young woman named Robin, ends up as his new caretaker. She cannot believe the way he lives, so neglected, and she cleans up his house and finds a doctor who offers Ptolemy the chance to regain his memories with an experimental drug. The catch is that it will drastically shorten his life. Ptolemy figures it is worth it at 91, and the drug allows him lucidity long enough to get revenge for his nephew's death and to tie up some of his own loose ends. This novel is definitely a Walter Mosley book. It has some adventure, some violence, some humor, some science-fictional elements, and even a sense of social commentary. It's a different approach to the issues of memory loss and personal identity. The next choice is a short story by Alice Munro. It's entitled The Bear Came Over the Mountain, but it is probably better known as the source of the movie Away from Her. Grant and Fiona have been married for 50 years, and they are separated when Fiona must be put into a home due to the advancing state of her Alzheimer's. Grant must face the reality that he is losing his beloved wife. especially as she begins a flirtation with one of the men in her facility named Aubrey. Seeing her new attachment to Aubrey, Grant is lost as to what to do, and when Aubrey's wife decides to take him home again, Grant is left to decide what is the most loving act, spending his days with a disconsolate Fiona in hopes that she will remember their 50 years together, or returning Aubrey to her by actively convincing his wife to readmit him. Finally, no discussion of memory would be complete without mentioning the great fictional work on this subject, Marcel Proust's In Search of Lost Time. This 7-volume novel is one of the longest continuous works in fiction, and it explores how memory works, and how a life can be recalled and re-experienced. While there is no specific illness in this book, it is about memory itself, and how losing memory, as well as unexpectedly regaining it, is part of a natural life. Well, thank you for listening to ShelfHelp. To keep up to date with what is happening at 4 Rooms, read our blog at 4rooms.ca/blog, or subscribe to our newsletter, which can also be found at our website. Join us again in a few weeks for our next installment of ShelfHelp.